Call to order the Currituck County Planning Board meeting for August the 13th, 2024. At this time, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask for disqualifications on the case in front of us. Hearing none, we're going to move on. We do have a quorum for the evening. Also, item 4, I'm going to entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda for this evening.
I'll make a motion. We approve the agenda for this evening.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, likewise. Moving on to item 5, under approval of the minutes for July 9th, 2024. If anybody's had a chance to look at them, any changes, please note. If not, I'm going to go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the July 9th, 2024 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
We've got a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed likewise. All right, no old business. Now let's move on to new business. One case in front of us this evening, under new business, BB 24-20, Currituck County, request for an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 1, General Provisions, Chapter 2, Administration, Chapter 3, Zoning Districts, Chapter 4, Use Standards, Chapter 6, Subdivision and Infrastructure Standards, Chapter 7, Environmental Protection Standards, Chapter 10, Definitions and Measurements to reference the Imagine Currituck 2040 Vision Plan as the land use plan and incorporate the transect methodology. And we will hear from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As this board is aware, the Board of Commissioners did adopt the Imagine Currituck 2040 Vision Plan as the land use plan for Currituck County, and that was certified by the Division of Coastal Management. The plan was adopted by the board on June 20th of 2022. And this text amendment implements that plan, defines it as the county's land use plan, and incorporates the transect methodology. I'm sure many are familiar with the 2006 land use plan classifications of full service, limited service, rural, and conservation. The new transect terminology is a little bit different, and I'll go over that here in a second. Firstly, just wanted to orient you to the future land use maps. On the left here, you have the future land use map from the 2006 plan, and you can see those classifications I just named. And then on the right, you have the future land use map of the Imagine Currituck 2040 Vision Plan for the county. And you can see the legend there with the new transect names: O1 preserved lands, O2 reserved lands, G1 low density growth, G2 controlled growth, G3 mixed use centers and corridors, and G4 village centers. You can see that a lot of the maps are similar with respect to those classifications and how they're defined. Here's the future land use map transition that staff has been using to this point when fielding inquiries from property owners and potential developers about what land use plan classification their property fits into. So you can see that the 2006 conservation classification is similar to the O1 preserved lands in the new land use plan, or the Imagine Currituck 2040 Vision Plan. Conservation and rural is similar to the O2 reserved lands. rural and limited service is similar to the G1 low-density growth of the Imagine Currituck 2040 vision plan. And we've had the plan since 2022, and I keep calling it new, and I I kind of want to just refer to it as the land use plan, but you can see the habit is hard to break. There's full service of the 2006 plan, which is going to correlate to the G2, G3, and G4 transects of the new plan. And I'll just go through each amendment item one at a time, and feel free to stop and ask any questions along the way. The first item is amending Chapter 1, defining the Imagine Currituck 2040 vision plan as the land use plan. Item 2 replaces the term 2006 land use plan, which does appear a few times in the ordinance, replaces that term with the term land use plan. Item 3, this is related to special use permits. Currently, the ordinance requires commercial structures exceeding 5,000 square feet in areas outside of full service areas to have a special use permit approved. And we've amended that full service area terminology to read G2, G3, or G4 transects of the land use plan. And I will note here that in the work session with the Board of Commissioners, the board did want staff to look into whether there would be certain uses that may not require a special use permit outside of full service areas, and staff will be working on that language. For now, we wanted to go ahead and clean up the ordinance and get the new transect methodology in place. There's similar language about the full service areas for the administrative adjustment section of the ordinance, that modifications in a building setback by up to 20% in full service areas, that's going to be removed, and we'll put in G2, G3, or G4 transects. I'm seeing here that transects is not underlined, and I'm not really sure why, but that's new of the land use plan. So, and then the other, number 3 there says modifications in building setbacks by up to 15%. And it previously said, or it currently says outside full service areas, and that will reflect the other transects that are not the G2, G3, and G4 that we're considering to be those full service areas now. Again, no policy change, just making the ordinance consistent with the new land use plan. And then in the administrative adjustment review standards, those same changes are being made. Item 5, this is in the single-family residential mainland zoning district. You can see the density table here under the dimensional standards for conservation subdivisions, which is the required subdivision for this particular zoning district. You can see in the currently in rural and conservation areas, the maximum density is 0.33. That will now reflect the O2 transect. In the G1 transect, which was the prior limited service area, it will still be 0.75. And in the prior full service area will be G2, G3, and G4 transects, and that density stays the same at a maximum of 1 dwelling unit per acre. We've also added a footnote. You can see footnote 7 beside the max gross density there at the top left of the table. And down at the bottom right, it says maximum gross density is limited by land use plan transects and sub areas. This alerts the users of the ordinance that we need to reference the land use plan to determine what maximum densities are permitted, that there's a zoning district, but those densities are limited by the land use plan, as well as some sub areas of the land use plan. For instance, Jarvisburg may have lower maximum densities than Moyock in certain transects of the land use plan. So we just wanted to be transparent and call attention that this zoning ordinance is tied closely to the land use plan. Item 6, this is in the mixed residential district, and there's similar changes here to the maximum density, striking full service area and adding in the G2, G3, and G4 transects, and striking limited service area and adding in the G1 transect. And you can see there's a footnote here as well, number 9, which is a new footnote that says maximum gross density is limited by land use plan transects and sub areas. Then also you can see the existing footnote number 7, which limits the size of commercial structures in this mixed residential district. based on being, it limits commercial and personal service uses limited to a maximum size of 2,500 square feet per building, and sites designated as full service, which will now be G2, G3, and G4 transects, and fronting a major arterial, are limited to a maximum building size of 10,000 square feet. So we're not changing that language, we're just making it consistent again with the Imagine Currituck plan. Then item 7, in the general business zoning district, again, striking through the full service language and adding in G2, G3, or G4 transects. And this is the dimensional standards table for the general business district as well. And you can see here, there are some setbacks for major arterial streets that are increased depending on land use plan classification. 30 feet currently within full service areas and 100 feet outside of full service areas. So we're reflecting the new terminology there. So in G2, G3, and G4 transects will be 30 feet setback from a major arterial, and outside of, or within the G1, O1, and O2 transects, it's a 100-foot setback. And I'll just mention here that there are some non-conforming sites out there, and we have non-conforming language of the ordinance to try to work with property owners that have buildings on these sites that are potentially non-conforming. And then in the footnote, for commercial structures exceeding 5,000 square feet, must obtain special use permit approval if proposed outside of G2, G3, or G transects will be how that reads now. Very same language changes in the limited business district with respect to the full service to G2, G3, or G4 transects. And the dimensional standards table has the same language change as well. Those increased setbacks depending on the land use plan classification. The Village Center District, this is an allowable zoning district in Corolla. There's no current property that has this zoning designation, but you can see in the table here that it was permitted in designated full service areas only. So that has been updated to reflect the G2, G3, and G4 transects. I also have this note here, some staff commentary that you may have noticed. There's notes at the bottom of this table that says that maximum densities may be increased to 4 dwelling units an acre through some sustainable building features, and it references a section of the ordinance, as well as that the maximum floor area ratio on the FAR may be increased to 0.6 through sustainable building features. So that section of the ordinance was amended to remove some of the density credits. So there's really no tie here currently on how this works. Again, there's no property zone this, and there's no applications, and I haven't had any conversations with property owners looking to rezone to this, but I just wanted to make this note so the board was aware that that's something we probably need to look into. Either removing the language if that's the best approach, or adding the language into that sustainable development practices section of the ordinance, so staff has the guidance as well as the developer has the guidance to know how they can get increased density or floor area ratio. Again, these zoning districts aren't going to appear without a legislative action by the Board of Commissioners, so this board will see any request for those rezonings as well. Chapter 10, this is actually a legacy district, the PDR, but since we are changing the terminology, we also wanted to change it here. So you can see we've added in the allowable district locations, and we struck that from the density chart. Seemed a little bit cleaner to separate the density here from the transects where the zoning district is permitted. The same thing for the PDM, Plan Development Mixed District. This is not a legacy district. This is still a zoning district that's available. And in this particular section, it made sense to add a footnote regarding the maximum density, that density is limited by the land use plan transects and subareas. So although a property may be eligible to be rezoned to PDM, it still has to be consistent with the land use plan That includes the densities, and so if certain areas of the county have lower densities, then this max density of the zoning ordinance will be limited by the land use plan and the densities and future land use map. The PDO, which is Plan Development Outer Banks, there's not any of this actual zoning district either, to my knowledge. But again, just putting in the allowable district location and separating that from the density line here in the table. Solar energy facilities currently are not permitted to be located in full service areas, so we've updated that language. Conservation subdivisions. So this slide doesn't have all the language from your agenda packet, but you can see the areas where there's some proposed changes to the language which are related to the single-family mainland district. So we've added language that conservation subdivisions shall be limited to the following maximum densities, which are based on land use plan classifications. And then we've added this sentence that says land use plan transects and sub-areas limit maximum density. Again, just alerting anyone that's reading the ordinance that we also need to look at the land use plan. So the full service areas are the G2, G3, and G4 transects are max density of 1 dwelling unit per acre. The G3 transect, which is previously referred to as the limited service areas, a maximum of 0.75 dwelling units per acre. And then the O2 transect, which was previously rural or conservation, is 0.33 dwelling units per acre. And I did want to mention too, for the Board of Commissioners as well as this board, is that the maximum density for residentially zoned property on the mainland, the SFM property, in the O2 transect of the land use plan, which is that reserved lands, the lighter green color of the map, is limited to 0.33 dwelling units per acre. So there's no opportunity for single-family mainland properties to get that 0.4 that the ag allows with additional open space. So it's just something that it seemed like we needed to at least acknowledge it, and if there's a change to be made, to talk about that. Any questions on that one? All right. Item 15. There's a section of the ordinance that talks about open space set-asides and how you calculate those set-asides. There's this provision that's related to open space that's not in a full service area, so we've reflected the new transect terminology there. And then there's some definitions to be amended. We're going to remove the definition of full service area, provide definitions for the G1, G2, G3, and G4 transects here. Really just referencing the future land use map of the Imagine Currituck 2040 vision plan. And then the land use plan, 2006 will just be land use plan, and then we'll define that as the Imagine Currituck 2040 vision plan. Limited service areas terminology will be removed. And then the O1 and O2 transects will be defined. And then also the sub area is also defined. Since we did use the term sub area a few times in the ordinance, we felt like it was necessary to define that. So those are those geographic areas. I showed you the blue Moyoc area earlier on the map. Those are the areas that are defined by the future land use map, and they have corresponding policies and maximum densities based on the land use plan transects. So that's the ordinance amendment before you tonight. You're familiar, I'm sure, with the text amendment review standards that you may consider. The staff does recommend approval because the request is consistent with the Imagine Currituck 2040 Vision Plan Land Use Goal 1, as well as an action of that plan, which is CC Act 11, which is to update the ordinance zoning districts and the zoning map to align with the Imagine Currituck future land use transect categories and future land use map. I'll be happy to answer any questions the board has at this time.
Any questions for Jenny? Hearing none, I'm going to open the floor for discussion between the board members. Nothing? All right. Hearing no discussion, I'm going to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve PB 24-20 because the request is in conformance with the general purpose and intent of the Unified Development Ordinance and is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Imagine Currituck 2040 Vision Plan, including Land Use Goal 1 and CC-ACT-11.
Okay, and we have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Motion passes. Okay, any announcements from anyone?
The Board of Commissioners did schedule a work session for their next they canceled the regular meeting on August 19th, which is this Monday. They'll be hearing a presentation from Chandler Thinks regarding potentially rebranding, which was the tourism department was involved in. But there are several planning items on that work session agenda. The discussion of the Don Holler text amendment that was proposed. Discussion of the most recent text amendment that this board heard on the multifamily or reduction of the setback for multifamily adjacent to residential. So the board wanted to discuss that a little bit. We'll also be talking about upper story dwelling units and commercial zoning districts, about private wastewater and mining operations, sand mines, as well as evidentiary hearings.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So
When's that work session?
it's August 19th. It begins at 4 with the Chandler Thinks presentation, and then the planning items will follow.
And Monday's meeting is canceled.
The regular meeting was canceled, and they'll have the special meeting beginning at 4. Yeah, those work sessions, you can come and listen. Generally, they're for the board to have their discussions and give direction.
Okay. Any more announcements from anyone? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
You ready?